What is good, guys? It is Reed and welcome back to another video. Today we got an awesome part 2 sort of to another tutorial that I did. I'm going to be talking about the multi-card strike shift. So if you have not seen my original tutorial on the strike shift, go check it out. I would highly recommend you check out that before you watch this video. But in this video I'm going to be talking about how to do the strike shift with multiple cards. Now the strike shift is an absolutely awesome control. It pulls a card that's going into the middle of the deck, sort of in think of like a DPS motion, but straight into a gambler's cop. Sort of my handling on Daniel Madison, I think he calls it the Susan shift or something, but there are some differences in the mechanics, and particularly the striking motion, which is where it gets its name. It's also reminiscent of single card straddle pass, and of course Erdenes and the DPS. So in this video I'm going to be talking about more so the adaptations and what you need to change and keep in mind when you're trying to do it with multiple selections. One of the greatest multi-card controls. So I hope you guys enjoy it. As always, if you'd like to check out private lessons, you can at the link below. If you'd like to see more videos like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and let's just jump right into the video. So time for a quick demo on this control. We'll take the 4 jacks, leave them at 4 completely different spots in the deck. I'll take those cards, push them into the middle of the deck, and just like that, I have all 4 in a gambler's cop. So, time for the breakdown on this control. So again, I'm not going to go over the mechanics nearly as much in detail as I did in the original tutorial, so definitely go check out that first. But essentially what's happening here, and I'll show you with one card, is the card is getting pushed at an angle, as you would with the DPS, pulled to the point where it hits this back thumb. It's rotated, so you have an edge here, and then the index finger swings around and kicks this card back deep into your hand for a gambler's cop. So from the side, you can see what's going on, and you see how that happens. The other thing that's important to keep in mind is the pinky and ring finger are pulling down as the strike happens and gets it in a cop underneath. So this is a control that, when done right, can happen very quickly and almost with no movement. It avoids the big grip motion of the DPS when you're trying to get that card into palm, and it happens much quicker than like a single card straddle pass, in my opinion, because of the way that the card is just, sort of striked out of the deck. So the biggest problem and the biggest difference you're going to have with more cards is less control. Now, obviously, I think the goal would be to be able to do this with 4 cards, so you can do 4 of a kind. 3 is still very useful, but I think if you can get 4, you're at a very good spot, and you'll have a very useful control under your belt, a good multi-card control. Now, 4 is, difficult enough, but it is doable. So the problem that you have is when you have 1 card, you can move it, you can do adjustments very easily. The second you introduce more, these 3 cards that are not on the one touching your palm are now kind of free floating, right? So you really have to make sure they're gripped and they always have contact from the other fingers, because the second your hand opens, they start sliding around, right? Whereas 1 card doesn't move. So that's your biggest problem. Now, one thing that helps is having a deck that's more broken in. If the cards are really slippery, like this one, it's going to be even harder. Another tip is when the cards go in, if you have any control over where they go, put them as close together as you can, right? Maybe 5 cards separating them all into something like that, and that's going to make your life, it still looks really good when you fan it out wide. It looks like they're all in completely different spots, and if you really clump the top and the bottom, it can really look good. And what that's going to do is make this much closer to just being 1 card and make your life a lot easier. It's all going to be together. If they're very spread out, not only do you have to push them through, but you have to kind of corral them all back together. Now, the same exact thing is happening. You're pushing these all at an angle. You just need a little bit more force, right? You can't use too old of a deck, though, because otherwise there'll be too much friction and this won't work. But otherwise, it's exactly the same. The cards are going to slide all together, pull like this, and then it's going to strike this corner and pull them all back into a cop. Now, I think this is easier than trying to DPS multiple cards, because when you do that, you have to come here and grab them all in a palm, and it's much harder to get them all perfectly in a palm and stay lined up the way the DPS works. Because the strike happens quickly and it's just the 1 finger shooting out and striking, they all stay together and go straight into where you need them. So personally, I think this is the best for doing multi-card. Now, one thing that happens, and that's very great about this, is they all kind of stay in a packet, even through the strike, because they're all together and you just hit them back. they fall into your hand. Now, you can see what just happened, and that's honestly the point I was just about to get to, has to do with that slip, and that's where most of you are going to struggle the most. And doing it slowly is the problem there, right? That's the problem. If you take your time and do this too slow, these cards slip off every single time. If you can do it fast, what's going to happen is you're going to be able to push those cards back, quickly get them, and again, that's not ideal, but you're going to be able to, it shows the point. You're going to be able to grip them before they fall out. And when you do that at actual fast speeds, you can actually get them to stay all together. So I push it through and they can actually stay in basically a perfect packet. So this does involve speed, because if you're too slow, as those cards push through, the top ones are going to start to fall before you have a chance to grip them. So that's where one problem can happen. The other major problem is going to be with the actual cop itself. So once you get those cards back into a cop, it's a lot more awkward to get these adjusted into a position that you want. What often happens, normally when you want to adjust cards into a cop, you can use this finger to push them deep into a cop. You can kind of open, I talked about this in the original video, open your hands and re-grip to kind of adjust, use your thumb to get them into a nice comfortable position that you're good to cop with. But with 4 cards, the bottom card's going to stick to your palm, you're going to try to push and only the top cards are going to go. It's just not as optimal. So you need to be essentially just better at it. You need to be more efficient at getting the cards closer to where you want them every single time. Okay, so you push them through and get them into a more comfortable cop position without having to do nearly as many adjustments. Now, this isn't something that I would say is ideally that you're just like you're in a super comfortable cop position that you're holding for like 5 minutes while something happens, right? You do a quick cop, hand the deck out to shuffle, 15 seconds, and the cards are back on the bottom of the deck. That would be my recommendation for this. Now, another issue you might have is as you squeeze, these cards some of them will buckle upwards instead of downwards. So the correction there is as you're holding this deck, and I should clarify is how you get into that position, but you pull these through, down, and then this deck is going to be pivoted because it's kind of like this, right? You pivot it back into your hand, just pinch it with the thumb, and now when this hand's over top, you can use this thumb to press those cards down into a deep cop, right? And that is a very advantageous thing that I would recommend you do. Push these through, pull, and then adjust into grip, and from the front it just looks like you're placing that in your hand, and then you can hand it out, even hand it out with the dirty hand. One thing that also happens is as you push through and these fingers try to grip, you're only you pull on that top card. So you want to be careful that you don't just pull it. So you got to have a nice combination of strike pushing these, and then you can kind of grip between the bottom of the hand and the pinky. So this bottom edge of the hand and the pinky can grip all 4 as the deck slides them out and they get pushed into a cop, okay? It's honestly just going to be practice to try to, get comfortable to have these cards in this position. The subtleties with this are basically the same as the original handling, right? Things that you can do to justify the little bit of movement. So as you pull those cards into a cop, giving them a little riffle as those cards are in cop like this, or pulling it through, handing the deck out to be shuffled, right? Those are all great things that are important to keep in mind as subtleties, and I think I could cover a few more in the other video if you're interested in some of the others. So in terms of some other ideas, when they're in the cop, you really don't have the option to open your hand wide too much, right? Because you're going to be tilted back, and the second your hand opens, those cards are going to fall. So you really need to make sure you're gripped at all times, and that's a big difference. With one card, you can open your hand a little bit and make minor adjustments, and it's not going to slip because it's kind of stuck to your palm. So that's one thing, you're not going to be able to make those adjustments anymore, right? I talk about that re-gripping to get the card in a better position. You can see the cards are just going to fall. So the biggest thing for that is you just need to get more comfortable with having cards not always perfect position in a gambler's cop. Like maybe it's super high like this. I can still hold it, use the thumb as a bit of cover for that corner and do it that way. If the card's a little bit more crooked than I would like, just practice getting used to it, not always having to be perfect in the exact way you like it, and that you can just deal with this for 10-15 seconds before you reload them. But again, that thumb adjustment, pushing down like this, is the biggest and easiest adjustment. You can push all 4 cards down and really get a good grip on them before you pull away. Pushing the cards through pulling them, and then getting them into a nice cup. That's the hardest part, just holding on to these cards and not having them fall. Finally, one of my favorite uses of this is to just do a bottom replacement, a bottom control with these three, right? So if you pull these through, you know, if with a DPS or a straddle pass, a lot of times you'll miss the card with this back pinky, or it'll get kind of crooked back here and you won't be able to get all the cards you need, or they'll shoot out or something like that. With the strike shift, I personally, and you know, obviously do what works best for you, but I always find the cards always come perfectly together to the bottom, and then I just load them in one motion like that. Whereas with other controls, if I try to straddle, I mean, that is very, you know, happens all the time. You pull and you get too much pressure and you lose one of the top cards, or one of them buckles upwards like that. It's just different things happen that with the strike shift, with only using the one finger and not like squeezing the cards, and just the way it works, I find personally, even with like a DPS, you know, getting them all perfectly in a palm like that can be much more challenging just to pivot them to the bottom. So guys, that is it for this video. I hope it was helpful. Hope you can see the value in the strike shift and using it for not only single cards but multiple cards. Again, if you want to check out the single card tutorial and the full in-depth tutorial on the strike shift, you can check it out in the cards. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think of this in the comments down below. So as always, if you guys would like some extra help with this or any other move, card magic, mentalism related effects, if you want custom lesson plans, custom routines, all that great stuff, you can check out my private lessons at the link below. I got a great discount going on for 3 lesson and 5 lesson deals. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and I will catch you in the next video.